Bonjour à tous and welcome to this video on French pronunciation. This, of course, is part of a series of videos. In this video, we're just going to be talking about the plosive sounds. They are the sounds b, d, g, p, t, and k. If you haven't seen the introduction to this series, I do recommend that you watch that first. So if you click somewhere around here, that will take you straight to that video. If, however, you have already seen that video, let's get straight on to talking about plosives in French. So the thing with French plosives is that they all exist in English. And so if you're a native English speaker, you can quite easily get away with pronouncing them in the same way as you do in English. It really won't make a difference to people's understanding. However, if you're looking to really hone your pronunciation skills, it's a good idea to have a look at these in a bit more detail because you'll discover that they are very slightly different to English. So we're going to start with the voiced plosive sounds. Remember, a voiced sound is one where we have vocal cord vibration. And so if, for example, you put your hand on your neck and say a sound like ah, you will feel some vibration. Compare that though with a sound like s, and you will not feel vibration. So if you can feel vibration, the sound is voiced. So the first sound we'll look at is the b sound, which is basically the same as an English b sound. You put your lips together, let the pressure build up behind them, and then release with some voicing, b. Now you can stop there, but if you're looking to sound as French as you possibly can, it's important to add some pre-voicing. Well, what is pre-voicing? So in English, when we say a b sound, we don't usually make any noise until after we've opened our mouth. B. In French, though, there tends to be a little bit of voicing before you open your mouth, which gives you more of a b sound. Again, it's not really going to affect anyone's understanding. People might not even notice, but it is the way that French people pronounce this sound.
B.
B. The spelling, of course, is very, very simple. We just use the letter B. That could be at the start of a word, in the middle of a word, or at the end followed by an E. As with most other consonants, if there is a B right at the end of a word, it will be silent, but followed by an E, you can pronounce it. B. Barbara est à bord du bateau de Bastien. Barbara est à bord du bateau de Bastien. So the story for the d sound is very, very similar. Again, in terms of mouth position, it's pretty much the same as an English d. So your tongue is going to rest somewhere around your alveolar ridge. Remember, the alveolar ridge is that bump in the roof of your mouth behind your teeth. You're going to let the pressure build up and then release it again with voicing. D, d. But once again, in French, this is typically pre-voiced. So we're going to start making some sound before we release. D. With this one, I would also recommend that you bring your tongue a little bit further forward. It doesn't even matter if the tip of your tongue touches your teeth, that's fine. Now this isn't going to have a major impact on the sound, compare d and d, but it might help you to start feeling the difference between English and French. And so if you can get into the habit of that, it will help you to distinguish the two languages.
D.
D. Once again, the spelling is very, very simple. Of course, we usually just use the letter D. We will see later on that there is one instance where the letter D does not make a D sound, but in any other case, it will. Le déjeuner de David est délicieux. Le déjeuner de David est délicieux. Finally, for the voiced plosives, we have the g sound. So again, this is pretty much the same as a g in English. The back of your tongue is going to rise to the back of the roof of your mouth. It will come into contact with the roof of your mouth. You build up the pressure and then release. G. Again, it is a good idea to add some pre-voicing if you're going for a really authentic pronunciation. And in this case, we get
G.
G. As you might expect, we spell this one with the letter G. If you've seen my fricatives video, you'll know that G followed by an E or an I does not make this sound. In that case, it makes a J sound, but followed by any other vowel, or indeed any other letter, it will make that G sound. Les grands garçons gallois gagnent. Les grands garçons gallois gagnent. So then we move on to the voiceless plosive sounds. So all of these in terms of position will be exactly the same as the three we've just seen. The only difference is that there will be no vocal cord vibration. So let's start with the p sound, which is the voiceless version of the b sound we saw at the start. So with this one, we're going to do the same thing that we do in English. We'll put our lips together, let the pressure build up behind them, and then release, this time without voicing. P, p. But even though we don't have to worry about pre-voicing because there is no voicing, there is another thing to contend with, and that is aspiration. So in English, voiceless plosives are accompanied by an extra gust of air. Consider a word like peak or pin. P. P. A lot of air comes out when we produce this sound, and in fact if you put a piece of paper in front of your mouth when you produce it, the paper will move. This of course is the reason that singers and people who do voiceovers use pop filters. In French though, there really isn't so much aspiration. That doesn't mean that you can't do it at all, but it is best to avoid it. I have a couple of tips for reducing aspiration. First of all, increase the tension in your lips and the pressure before you release. So hold it quite tightly. I usually find that that helps. If you're still struggling though, start with a word like spin or speak, any word that starts with SP, because in this case in English, the P sound is not aspirated. Spin, spin. Then all you need to do is remove the S sound and you get pin, pin. Don't worry if this sounds a little bit like the word bin, that's just the nature of English Bs, they're not very strong, and remember if we have pre-voicing in the B sound in French, it will be more distinct from the P sound.
P.
B. Of course this sound is usually spelt with the letter P, it could be 1, it could be 2, it doesn't matter, it's always pronounced P. Pierre pense que papa n'a pas de soupe. Pierre pense que papa n'a pas de soupe. Next we have the T sound, which is the voiceless version of the D that we saw before. So again, the tongue position for this is pretty much the same as in English. The tip of your tongue is going to rest on or around your alveolar ridge. You're going to let the pressure build up and then release. But once again, in English, this sound tends to be aspirated. Think of a word like tick or tan. It's not a major problem if you make this sound when you're speaking French, but it is best to avoid it. Of the three voiceless plosives in French, I would say that this one is aspirated sometimes in French, especially in a word like tu. Tu, you do hear a little bit of a gush of air there, but it is a little bit less than English. Like with the D sound, I would also recommend bringing your tongue a little further forward for this one. This might also help you to reduce that aspiration. Again, increase that pressure, increase the tension, and that might help you remove some of that aspiration too. And if you're having difficulties, start with a word that begins with ST, because again, that T is usually not aspirated. Think of a word like stay, stay. Remove the S sound and you get day, day. Again, it might sound a little bit like the word day, but that's just English for you. Again, if we pre-voice the D sound, it will be much more different to the T sound.
T.
T. As you might expect, this one is spelt with the letter T, sometimes 1, sometimes 2. I mentioned before though that sometimes the letter D doesn't make a D sound, and that is when it's liaised. So if one word ends with a D, and the following word starts with a vowel, it will liaise, but it will be pronounced like a T, as in quand-il, quand-il. Toutes les toilettes sont trop petites. Toutes les toilettes sont trop petites. And then finally we have the K sound, which once again is very, very similar to the K sound in English, but guess what? K's in English are also aspirated, so we get a sound like this. K, k. If you can, do your best to avoid aspiration in this case. Again, a good idea with this one is to start with an SK word, as in skip, skip, and then remove the S. Skip, skip.
K.
K. Spelling for this one is a little bit more varied than the others. We can of course use the letter C, although we do need to be careful. If you've seen my fricatives video, you'll know that a C followed by an I or an E makes a S sound, but followed by any other letter, it will be pronounced K, QU also makes this sound, so be careful. In English, QU is pronounced que. In French, it's just que, as in qui. Unlike other consonants, a word final C is sometimes pronounced, usually if there's a vowel before it, as in the word avec. This isn't always the case, but it is a good rule of thumb. Just like in English, there are some situations where CH makes this sound, although it's a little bit random. So for example, in the word caractère, which of course means character. The letter K is a relatively rare letter in native French words, but it does crop up sometimes in loan words, as in quiche. And then perhaps even rarer still, we have words that just start with a Q, like Qatar, which of course means Qatar. Christophe crie avec Cathy à 4 heures. Christophe crie avec Cathy à 4 heures. And there we have it, the French plosive sounds. So if you're not too worried about your pronunciation, I don't think you need to worry about a lot of this, especially if you're a native English speaker, because as I said at the start, all of these sounds exist in English. I do think it is worth looking into them in more detail though, if you're really trying to improve your pronunciation. It will make all the difference. If you have any questions, please do let me know. Thank you very much for watching this video, and until next time, à bientôt!